Hey everybody, what's up? Hope you guys are doing good today, and thanks for taking a couple minutes out and checking out today's video. And time for another story. I like to do these stories about once a week, once every other week. It seems like it breaks up some of the hardcore fishing info that I try to do here. And today's story is I'm going to tell you a little bit about my past as an outlaw angler. Share that with you guys. But before I get started, just a couple of little reminders here. Next Thursday, Johnny's going to have his next electronics virtual seminar. I think there may be a couple more spots signed up for that or open for that. You can check it out on fishthemoment.com, see if there is. And also on April 15th, Johnny and I have our next virtual online seminar we're going to do together on post-spawn patterns for fishing for bass. So if you guys would like to sign up for those, just go to fishthemoment.com, check them out. They're a good time for everybody. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about my past being an outlaw angler. A little bit of history into that first. Where I grew up at in Joplin, Missouri, like I said, the place that I grew up at, my dad had lived there since 1938 or 39 when he was a little kid. And he lived there his whole life. And, you know, back when he was in his 20s, I think he bought that house from my grandparents, and that's where I grew up in, and my dad still lives there. So my dad's actually lived in this house that I grew up in for 80 years, over 80 years. And anyway, I've talked a lot about the little creek that's down at the below of the house in some of my past videos, but there was also, across from the creek, there was a set of really nice farm ponds. Not really farm ponds, they were like backyard ponds, big ones. But there was this one piece of property over there that was super nice. It was probably 20 acres. And they had 3 really big ponds on it, like 2 to 3 acre ponds. And my dad, I remember him telling me that him and his dad used to go down there and they let him catfish, and they'd catch a lot of catfish back in the 1940s during World War II, and telling me a lot of stories about it. So anyway, as I got a little bit older, I got 11, 12, 13 years old, I started to outgrow Turkey Creek because it had just, bluegill, black perch, and some 12, 13-inch bass in it. And I was reading Bassmaster magazine, and I didn't have any way to go fishing because I didn't have a boat and I couldn't drive. So I went over to ask these people if I could fish their farm ponds over there, and they turned me down, which I can't believe somebody would turn like a 12-year-old kid down just to go fishing, but they did. And I didn't really like that. And my sense of wanting to catch bass overpowered everything else. So one day, I snuck into that pond. And I started fishing it, and it was right about, I didn't tell my mom and dad about it, so I snuck in there, and it was right about dark. And I was fishing it, and all of a sudden I heard them, the door open, and some people were yelling at me to get out of there. So I ran out, climbed the fence. They had like a 10-foot game fence around the whole thing. And there was one area where there was a gate where I could climb over it. So I climbed over and got out of there. So a couple weeks later, I did the same thing, but I went down there, and this was only like, just a block away from my parents' house. So I could just walk out of my house down the road to the ponds. So a couple of weeks later, I went down there and I snuck in there right about dark, and I'm fishing and I'm catching them on spinnerbait. It's like I couldn't believe it. I'm like 12 or 13 years old, just ripping them on a spinnerbait. And all of a sudden, I heard the door slam, and all of a sudden they got into a Jeep, turned the lights on, and started coming at me as fast as that Jeep would go. And I'm running as fast as I can, jumped that fence, got over that fence, and ran off into the woods and hid. So, at that point, I don't know how they knew I was out there. It was dark. I don't know if they had a camera or what the deal was, but they chased me out of there. But that didn't stop me. I kept going in there I didn't go in there all the time, but a couple times a year I would sneak in there. And most every single time they'd catch me, but I'd always get away from them before they could get to me. I remember one time, I was probably 14 or 15 at this time, and I'd snuck out of the house like at midnight, late at night, and my mom and dad were asleep, and I snuck out, and I walked down there by myself with a spinnerbait, and I was ripping them, and I put them on a stringer. Now this, you got to remember, this is back in the 1970s. This is back in the mid 1970s. So I put him on a stringer, and I had, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 bass on a stringer, and I jumped the fence, the fence that I always got across, and I started walking home up the hill, and all of a sudden here comes the the police car with his lights on. And I'm like I said, I'm 14 or 15 walking down the road, and this policeman stops me with the lights, and he shines the lights at, he gets out, and I got my rod and a stringer of bass, and I told him that I'd been at the creek, which obviously he knew I wasn't at the creek. I think those people had called called the police on me. And anyway, he goes, "Are you Kirk Blockett's boy?" And that's my dad's name's Kirk. And I go, "Yes, sir, I am." And he goes, "Well, you better get back to the house right now." And he let me go. So after that, excuse me, that was my days of sneaking out of that pond was over. But anyway, after we got a little bit older, when I started driving, like I got 15 or 16, did you come out to say hi again?
Yeah.
Okay, you still not feeling good?
As soon as we go inside.
Okay, I'll be in right in. Yeah, he got his daycare. They got sick there. The kids got sick, and he's been sick today on there. So getting ready to put him to bed. But anyway, when I got to be 15 or 16 years old and I could drive, again, at this point, I didn't have a boat, and I was just ate up with bass fishing, and there was nowhere to fish hardly around. I mean, it was just like I didn't have anywhere to go fishing except for farm ponds. So me and a couple buddies of mine, David Bailey and Curtis Devine, who are still great friends of mine, my best friends today, we terrorized the farm ponds. We drove all over, the 4-state area of Southwest Missouri, and we were masters at sneaking in farm ponds. I mean, we had the best ponds, and we wouldn't keep them. We'd always turn them back, but we'd get out there and we'd wade those ponds and we'd take chances. And every so often here'd come a farmer with a pickup truck after us, and every single time we were able to get away from them, to get out of there. I do remember one time we snuck in this one farm pond, and it was sort of set down in a little ravine, so you couldn't really see over the top of it. And all of a sudden we heard this truck. We were fishing, and we heard this truck, and this truck came over the top of the hills, and this guy jumped out of his truck with a 12-gauge shotgun and started just screaming at us. I mean, I thought he was going to shoot us. It was absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, we ran out of there, got out of there, and never came back to there. But anyway, that's how I used to do it. It's like I was so ate up with bass fishing that I was willing to risk danger, putting myself in danger to go fishing, because I didn't have anywhere else to go fishing, and I had to go fishing. But I tell you what, there was a period of there where I was a farm pond expert. I could look at a pond, I could tell you where they were at, and it was, that's the way I learned to fish. I mean, that's where all of the quality bigger bass that I ever caught when I was young came out of those, sneaking in those farm ponds all over. And most of the time, we'd ask for permission first. I mean, we would ask. The only people that would ever give you permission to fish were the ones that had ponds that were no good. And they would never give you permission to, to fish a pond if it was any good. But we were young and dumb and loved fishing, so most of the time we snuck in there anyway. And that was, I don't know if that's good or bad. That's just what happened. But like I said, I owned a pond. I lived up outside of Lamar, and I was fortunate enough to have a 40-acre lake of my own that I had up there. And people would come and ask me to fish all the time, and I'd try to let as many people as I could come in up there, set some ground rules with them, not let them keep fish, because I know how hard it is to find places to fish if you don't have a boat. So I was trying to be a little bit more open to that. So anyway, that's my story about my outlaw days. And I had several of them with that. I just wanted to share that with you guys. So I'm going to get in here and take care of Elijah. He's about ready for bed, so we'll talk to y'all later. See you.